I don't know about you guys, but one thing I don't like in the winter time is cold hands. And that's exactly what we're going to tackle today by installing a set of hand warmer and thumb warmer grips on the Big Bear. Stay tuned. Okay, so first things first, we're going to open up the package to see what's inside. Alright, so we've got our left and right hand grips, we've got a control module, we've got some wiring of course, we've got a set of accessories to mount the control module, and our thumb warmer. Okay, so after thoroughly reading the instructions, they highly recommend a key power source, which is a 12 volt source in your system. So why key power and what is it? Well, key power is exactly what it sounds like. When you turn your key to on, you're going to have 12 volts going to the system, and when you turn the key off and when the bike shuts off, you won't have any power at that source. Why do you need it? Well, if you forget these hand grips on without the bike running, well, as we would imagine, it would drain the battery. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to find key power on the Big Bear, and we're going to go from there. Alright, so before we go any further, I wanted to mention that I'm doing this on a Yamaha Big Bear, but this installation will virtually work on just about any other ATV out there, provided you follow a little bit of the precautions that I'm going to mention. So like I mentioned, I'm going to start by looking for key power, and it's super easy on one of these Big Bears because they have this accessory plug at the front, and it has key power. Now, just to show you how you would check for that, there's also a connector right at the back here. So I'm going to undo this connector, just like that. I'm going to set my multimeter to 12 volts. So without any power right now, assuming that the black wire is the ground and the white wire is in fact power, we're going to probe these two wires. Now we don't have any power, and that's with the key off. Now if I select the key on, we are going to do the same thing. And there we go. Now we've got our 12 volts. Okay, so now that we've established where the key power is, I've actually brought the two leads up here so that I can easily work on them. The next thing we need to do is remove the old grips. So we're just going to use a knife. We're going to make a slice on the top. Just like that. So most kits and most handlebars are 7/8 diameter. But it's always a good idea that before you go ahead and mix your epoxy or apply your crazy glue, that you make sure that your grips are going to fit. And that is going to be our next step. Next up, we're going to clean up the handlebar with a heavy grit sandpaper. This will get rid of all of the glues and all the imperfections, and that'll help us slide our new one on. Now that we've finished sanding, it's important that we make sure to test fit our hand grip. It's also important to note that in this particular set, the instructions state that there is no left or right. So that gives us some flexibility into installing it, so we can make sure we have either the loom coming backwards or vice versa with the other grip. So let's test fit this guy. So I have never seen a set go all the way in. As a matter of fact, I had to sand down the handlebar a little bit in order to get it as far as it does now. So out of the 15 to 20 sets that I've installed, working at a dealership, probably even more, this is actually quite normal. So the next part of this is going to have to be done really quickly. So what you're going to do, you're going to get ready with your brake clean or your parts cleaner, You make sure your handlebar is nice and clean. I like to add a rag down below here because I'm going to be using just a regular crazy glue, so to speak. I highly recommend going out and buying the, they call it grip glue for these things because they can handle the heat a little bit better. If they get hot, they won't come loose. But I've also had some good luck with some of this just crazy glue. So we're going to apply a little bit on the handlebar all around. You actually don't need that much, believe it or not, because it spreads out pretty good. Next, make sure you have a heavy-duty hammer to finally push that last little bit. So it's also important that before we put this on, we make sure that we have the grip in the orientation we want, because once that glue sets, it's not coming off. And if it doesn't make it all the way in, you're going to have a big time struggle trying to take it off. So I already know that my grip needs to face about this way to make sure the wiring goes around the thumb control. So here we go. Just like that. Now that's not coming off. So now you know why I'm talking about that you have to work quickly. Now we just have the other side to do, then we'll move on to the thumb. But before we do that, I just want to show you guys that this is what happens if you don't prep the surface quite properly and you don't work quickly enough. I end up with a little bit of a gap here. Nothing severe, but I won't be able to push that any further without damaging the hand warmer. So, next thing we need to do, we need to clean the surface of the thumb here. Just a little bit like that. So most thumb warmers, like in this kit, will use a self-adhesive. We'll use a little bit of a parts cleaner, get rid of any oils, any greases or dirt. And we're going to make sure that we have the orientation again just right so that we don't have to peel this off a second time. That's going to go good just like that. We're going to then remove the adhesive protectant and we're going to put the heater element right over the thumb. Just like that. Now, this is probably the easiest part of the installation. Now the next part is they provide you with a heat shrink. So the proper way to shrink this would be to use a heat gun, but unfortunately I don't have a heat gun. So I'm going to use a torch. Now of course, if you're going to use an open flame, always have a fire extinguisher handy. Be aware of anything is flammable nearby, such as a gas tank, for example. So we're going to make sure that we're going to point this in the right direction. I'm going to fire this up. I'm going to turn it down just a bit so that we're not burning anything and all we're looking for is the heat. So what I like to do is I like to leave the end overhanging a little bit, because just as I'm about to finish folding everything over, or shrinking everything over, I fold it back so that you end up with a nice clean finish. I'm going to use a rag because this is going to be hot. So as you can tell, there's a little bit left, and I just like to take it, fold over just like that. Shrink it right there. Now there you go. Now it's going to be nice and comfortable on your thumb. You're not going to have anything sticking out and intruding on your ride, is to get to the wiring. Now as for the wiring and putting in the control box, it's actually pretty simple. Just like the thumb warmer, you've got yourself a self-adhesive pad in the back. I've already gone ahead and mounted the plate to the handlebar. They recommend it on the left side, so that's what I've done. And that's more than likely because this is how the wiring comes out of the box. So just like that. Now that's nice and tight. What I like about this system is that you can actually control the heat anywhere in between, which is really neat. When it comes to these plugs, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Now, this particular, they got little symbols, of course, so this is clearly the symbol for our power, which is right here. So this is our power harness. The symbols match. Those are going to go together. But before we do any of that, I almost forgot. I'm working with electrical, and you guys know me and my electrical stuff. We're going to put some dielectric grease on these connections. No electrical job in this garage is complete without having used at least a little bit of dielectric grease. I'm going to do the other thumb here. Alright, now that that's done, now we can start making some connections. There you have it. So those connections are all done. I'm going to do my best to tuck them in under here so that you can't see these. Next thing we need to do is quite simply take the negative terminal, pop it on the negative side over here, positive terminal onto the positive side. This connection turned out great. These are all nice and sealed. They're going to be free of moisture. So the only thing left to do is to tidy up. So we're just going to take these wires. So I've got 2 wires coming down here to make them go all down the handlebar. Probably tuck them either somewhere underneath this location here or down below in here so that they're out of the elements as much as possible. But before we go, guys, there's one last thing we can do, and that's to test them. So there's an indicator light on the front of this control box. So if I turn the key on and I go ahead and I turn the indicator on, we've got some power. So that's awesome. And again, to make sure that we do actually have it on the key switch or key power, if I turn the power or the key off, we got no power, which is exactly what we're looking for. That way there, we will never drain the battery in the event we forget it. But let's leave it on for a few minutes here and see if it gets warm. Okay, it's been about 1.5 minutes and already I'm feeling some heat out of the grips and especially on the thumb. For some reason, some of the thumbs warm up quicker, probably because they're a smaller element. But everything's working awesome. So that does it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. I'd also like for you guys to check out the description box. I have a playlist regarding this Big Bear build. And also, don't forget to comment and let me know what else you'd like to see. Would you like to see more add-ons on this thing? Or in general, what else would you like to see on the channel? Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.